And so nice to have you in Bombay, Sarah.
Very happy to be here.
I think we're all really excited to hear what you're going to have to say and for the judging that's going to take place tomorrow. Not that you need any introduction, but I thought this audience would love to know about your journey in the industry, how far you've come.
Okay, it's a long journey.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to be concise, but well, I started working at Italian Vogue as an intern in '94, and I had the opportunity, obviously, since the timing at that time was really slow, there was no internet, so it was really like very calm, and probably even the demand in fashion was a little bit low than now. So I had the opportunity to work on the 30th anniversary of the magazine at that time, and I kind of like being closed in a closet for 6 months and looking at the old Vogues and take a look about all the fashion and the photographers. So I had really the opportunity to have a plunge into fashion, which even though I come from a fashion family, I wasn't willing really to work in fashion. I just started because I wanted to work and not to study, so I didn't want to lose time. And then in the meantime, I started working in the features department, in the fashion department, following the shootings of the freelances of the magazine. And then I started being a stylist myself. And in the meantime, I was always willing to scout for new designers and which accessories or women's wear or menswear for the shootings I prepped. So this was even when I was assistant to other fashion stylists, because when you prepare a shooting, obviously you have your clothes from the designers that invest in the magazine or your own style, and then you have to obviously do a research of accessories and other designers. So that's where I started really having my passion in scouting. And then in around 2005, we launched our first our first contest for designers, which is Who's on Next, which was more for supporting Made in Italy, and it was open to international designers, but who had to produce in Italy. And then in the meantime, I continued to go around and do research, because in the meantime we had also trend supplements, where we would show the trends of the season, and there maybe I'd begin to have space for putting new designers. And then around the end of 2008, speaking with Franca, which was always supporting new designers, said, well, let's do more. And I said, well, we'd love to. And I said, well, let's call it Vogue Talents. And that's how it began. And the first issue came out in 2009.
24 years, that's the history of your career.
Yeah, I think, yeah, 24, yes, more or less.
And of course, the late Franca Susani, your aunt, was the incredible editor of Vogue Italia, and your mom started 10 Corso Como. So what was dinner table like in this fashion family? What was the conversation like at home?
We never ate. No, I'm joking. No. It's it's a normal family. I mean, even though it was the fashion, it wasn't about talking about work and everything. So it's more about probably living around it. So getting inspired and looking around, and it wasn't talking about work, but it was more like breathing it. So it was more about that, of getting used to it. But as I said, I really started when I was 19 to work, which, I knew my family was in the fashion industry, but I didn't really know at what length or at what know-how. So I just said, was really like kind of a simple question to my mother. I said, well, my aunt does work in a magazine, maybe she needs help. So that's how it started, really like not really knowing where I was ending up to.
So quite unplanned. Did you ever consider doing anything else which was not in the industry?
Well, right now, I think for me it's very important to support the new generation. So right now this is my aim, and obviously it's to also support talents around, and maybe focusing on other elements, which could be sustainability. So opening up to other things, but also always in support of the new generation.
So let's talk about Vogue Talents. You like to say that you highlighted the designers rather than found them. So who are the designers you've highlighted? Do you have a favorite story or anecdote over the years over someone you discovered?
Well, I always say that I don't really discover designers, but probably give them, the right spotlight at the right moment, because obviously scouting, it's very interesting and challenging, and obviously it's also responsible of choosing a designer in their early stage of their career and giving them the chance to have a platform such ours, because it could be like a double way of helping them or even killing them, because if they're not prepared, you know, to face the industry, maybe it's a way of not helping them out. So I always think it's highlighting them at the right moment. So well, we highlighted many designers at the beginning of their career, like J.W. Anderson, Simon Rochat, MSGM, and Paola Cademartori, Giannico, and even many more. So I think it's just having had the fact of, you know, believing in them at that moment and giving them the right spotlight. So this is more or less the story. And then it's, I mean, there are many stories, obviously, in the years, but probably the most, I mean, funny was that Giannico, who's this Italian designer, who's shoe designer, and it's going really well now, is that he approached me in Palazzo Morando, which is where we do our main venues twice a year for talents. He approached me and said, oh, I'm a shoe designer. So I met him, he showed me shoes, oh, you're really good. How old are you? Oh, I'm 17. So you're 17, okay. So it was really, he was really, really young, and we couldn't really give him the platform because, I mean, I never had the chance to meet someone less than 18 years old, and he was already really very focused. And so then the next year we hosted them, and the year after he did Who's On Next, and he won. So they're very different stories,
Sure.
each of one.
I'm sure you've seen that there's so much more interest in the fashion industry for young students wanting to get into design. So how does a young brand stand out when there's so many designers now?
Well, right now it's not easy because obviously the system is very saturated, but as in every other I think fields. So I think nowadays when I meet brands, I always tell them that, you know, nowadays to come out and be noticed, you have to have really your own storytelling, your own DNA, and your ideas very clear in mind. You have to be clear who is your customer, which it's not going to be everyone, because, I mean, not that you can be liked by anyone, but I think that it has to be a clear message of what you really want to see. So especially for designers that come out from countries such as like India, I always put them, you know, you have fantastic traditions, take them to your brand and develop them in a modern way that could be translated in the international market. So for sure it's their vision and the DNA, and really don't always say, I always say at the beginning, do not really listen to anyone, but you have to believe in what you really want to do.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about storytelling, because a lot of the young designers, of course, come to us also and ask us for advice on how they can really harness social media, because especially the storytelling has become so important in the digital age. What advice do you give to them to really create the right messaging?
Well, I think nowadays, I mean, especially in this moment worldwide, there are many messages coming out which are probably, unfortunately, most of them negative because of sustainability, and then all the fact of inclusivity, what's happening in America now. So I think it's the fact of, obviously, with social networks, it has really opened a world to everyone, but it's also a very challenging way of seeing life. So I always tell them, you know, be yourself. I mean, on social networks, I mean, you have to show what you really know to do, and not like to live the dream of the life for someone else. So I think this is really the problem right now, that many new generation of designers or of even young people are like inventing their a life which is not theirs.
Yes.
So I just always think to be yourself.
Authenticity.
Authenticity, yeah, exactly.
For a brand.
To be authentic, yeah.
I also think, you know, now having a creative mind, of course, is great, but it's as important to balance it out with the business side of things. What are the lessons young designers can learn in terms of really getting both aspects right in building their brand?
Well, nowadays, most of the problems of young designers is the business part, because the creative part, there is a creative part and it works generally, but then if there's not the money and the business plan, it doesn't go on. So obviously that's the main problem of many designers right now, and I just think that, you know, especially the fashion system and the brands and the groups need to help these designers, you know, things have been moving on really quick, and there are a lot of platforms and contests that help, designers. It's not just about the money, but it's about the support, especially marketing and business-wise. So for sure, I always think that when you start as a designer, I mean, you can have both creativity and business, which is not so easy. So it's always the matter to find a right-handed, person that helps you in the business part. But also, it's very important that yourself as a designer knows how the number works. It's not just giving that part to someone and you don't know how to get there. So probably it's also important to study a little bit of business in school or in a master to understand how to construct your own brand.
Bring them both together, both left and right brain.
Because then it happens that maybe your associate then knows how it works, and then there are big problems of split up, and then it's a problem, you lose your name and your rights. So you have to be always very focused and also understand really what happens around your brand and the people that work with you.
How do you have a checklist? Because you're now looking at so many designers. Is it more by instinct? How do you really work? Like, how do you gauge potential in young talent?
Well, no, I don't have a checklist. I always think there's a percentage also of luck and instinct, but more or less, I always see the fact that I was saying before, that the designer has a message, a DNA, and something special to see. Obviously, the quality is essential, and also the aesthetic of how they show the work. I don't select designers by my own taste, because if not, it would be a disaster. Because I always wear black. So, I choose designers because of the message they want to give about maybe something special or authentic, or it could be sustainability, or it could be a personal message, or it could be something tradition that has been lost in their country and they want to move on. It's different things altogether, but for sure creativity and quality is very important.
Is that the most exciting element for you in seeing a new brand? Like, what really, you see so many designers, you see so many clothes and so many accessories. What gets you personally really excited?
Well, I like to meet the designers, to speak to them, to understand their backgrounds, what they like, even not their personal life, but to understand how they got there and why they got there. So it's very important also to meet them. In fact, myself and my team, which we work together, is that majorly probably 80% of the designers which we work with, we have met. So that's very important too, yeah.
So let's talk about mentoring in the industry. How important is it? What is your advice to young designers in finding the right kind of mentor? Do you think the industry's opened up more? I remember a few years ago, Mr. Armani offered Stella Jean for the first time the use of his space in Milan to show his show, which was unprecedented at that time. I think it's the first time he ever did it. So how important is mentoring a young designer in the industry, and how does a designer really find the right kind of mentor, or who do they turn to for advice?
Well, I think it's fundamental. It's because the project, as you said, the Armani, he continued for many years. For 5 or 6 years he did that, and I think it's fundamental, because then usually in the fashion industry it's always about when you speak with brands and fashion designers and you ask them why you don't do that, and then they begin to ask you, oh, is the other brand doing it, or he's doing it. It's also about a little bit in kindergarten that you have to see who does it better. But the thing is that I think it's very important, because LVMH that launched this contest, it's fundamental, because apart from the money, that it's a lot of money, they also give a mentoring and support to the designer, because you give 300,000 euros to a designer, which is a lot of money, but if he doesn't know how to spend it, it's gonna go away in 6 months. So it's fun. So it's very important, and I think that now it's getting much more, because then you see also Loewe that has launched a scouting for handcraft and artisans and artists. So it's, for us, talent, it's 360 degrees. We are Italian Vogue, so it's more about the fashion, but it's directors, photography. So a lot has been moving in the last probably 5 years.
Yes. What is, in all the designers you've seen, what is a common mistake? Is there a mistake that you can point out that designers make, or something they should be careful about?
Well, yeah, the common mistake that they do is that they listen to too many different people. So that's the problem. No, because I see designers that, I follow them, and then maybe, I don't know, there were these duo designers that now I'm very happy because they're in a shortlisted for the Woolmark Prize as Duval Kapoor from India. And they've been on the market like for 6 or 7 years, and at a certain point they were very minimal and sporty. They had an identity. They were struggling, but they had an identity. One year they came up to me and they had this colorful printed collection. I said, what happened to you? Oh, well, we were in the showroom. The showroom says that right now, since everything is printed and colorful, we have to do that. But are you happy? No. I said, okay, but they told us it's going to work. Okay, so after 2 months after the sale season, I said, how do you go? A disaster. We lost our customers that were already not so many because they didn't recognize them. So the thing is that they listen to too many voices. That's the main.
And also still to be authentic to what your DNA is.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So let's get to India and this Scouting for India. So of course we've had some big wins from India recently with Rahul Mishra, Ruchika. We've had nominations for the prize. What do you think sets Indian designers apart that they're now becoming a focus? And what do you think holds them back in the same vein?
Well, I mean, Indian designers have, if you have to say Italy, what does Italy have? Italy has the quality and the production and has the know-how. India has this incredible tradition, and it has the colors and it has the embroideries. It has also Bollywood, which is good and bad for the designers. It has a lot of things, and I think that designers, when we decided to launch the scouting, is because, Vogue Talents is a platform that wants to support designers even in countries where you think that there's no fashion, but fashion is everywhere. So we did like 2 years ago for Africa, which is already, I think, like when they ask me which are the countries most interesting for me is Africa, India, there's Georgia right now. So I think India has this identity which you cannot see anywhere. And I think that the designers I met and the designers even which weren't selected, they really had a strong belief in what they were doing. And I think when it's about designers in countries where fashion is not their prime focus, I think they have you say in Italian, la fame, you're angry to do more. So I think this is what it challenges them more to other designers.
And is there anything that you think that the Indian design industry is lacking, which you feel is something they can improve on?
Well, from what I saw is, I think they're just probably afraid that I'm also learning about Indian culture, but I do understand that, especially in India, there is a strong identity of Bollywood fashion. I think that some of them are blocked because they're afraid that if they don't do that, they would never recognize. But I always say, okay, but you're Indian and you can be recognized in many ways, but then you have to go international, so it's not that you have to be stuck to your cultures. So it's about getting your cultures and developing in your personal style. So that's probably something that they still stop. And for some of them, maybe sometimes the quality, because there's another problem that here there's a lot of textile, so loads of textile, and so it's probably a problem of selecting the right one. So maybe trying to, when you have a lot, it's always difficult to choose the right thing. So probably these could be the two problems.
So the edit is important too, in a way, right? Editing down to the
the editing, but this could be, schools that could be having textile, courses that can make understand, designers where to choose from and to recognize a good cotton by a bad cotton or a, quality, and that's, I think, what I noticed. But then creative, it doesn't, they have the same creativity of other designers. It's just the fact of getting more self-confident.
So how do we, as an industry, make our design sort of globally relevant? Because of course, as you said, we have a strong culture of textiles, of embellishments, of manufacturing, of colors, you know. So how do we sort of compete on a global stage? Do the designers need to make their labels more, do they need to make them loud and proud, made in India, or how do they become more global?
Well, I'm not going to give an answer, but for sure, I mean, nowadays I see, like, for social networks, Instagram, it's a very powerful, communication, and people see that, and people want to buy from there or see it, do scouting, and I think that the aesthetic and the brand identity is very important. So I just think that when I was seeing the lookbooks of all these designers, even the ones I picked, I mean, there were probably one or two that had really a more international, which doesn't mean that the other were too Indian or that Indian is wrong, but I think it's just you have to think about that, you know, fashion is worldwide, so you have to try and think about bringing a brand identity that it's not going to be liked by everyone, but at least that comes out from your, you know, from your tradition. So the shooting has to be something more not linked too much to your country. It's like, you know, for us in Italy, years they've been doing always, you know, pizza, mozzarella, and mafia. So it's just like, you know, so it's just about bringing out the fact of not doing it, you know, to Bollywood way, or maybe too much of Indian style. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just that then you're stuck too much to your, and it means that you're not having a international vision.
So taking it out of context. In a way.
Exactly.
Putting it in a different context. So, you know, when I went through the list of the designers you've chosen, they're all quite different. So what was exciting for you from the ones that you've seen and the ones you've selected? Like what really stood out to you?
Well, first of all, it was not easy choice, because I have to say that was surprised, because when we decided to launch the Scouting of India, I said, well, India is hugely big. So I was expecting, I mean, not saying millions of applicants. There were, I think, more or less 200 now. I don't remember much well, but it says, okay, 200 out of all India, it's nothing. But then in the end, it's fine, because it happens also in other, it's not about the quantity, but it's about the quality. And so it was interesting because, as I said, when I choose designers, is very much in what I feel in the gut at the beginning, and then the first thing I do is see the images, okay, this I like, this not, this. Then I begin to see again and see, is that the quality, is that the image, then maybe I go and see back who I didn't choose at the beginning, just to see if something has missed. So, I mean, all these 11 designers, I think they're all different. It's true, now that I've seen them all together, it's true that everyone has their own identity. So that's already a message. So that's already something interesting, because you see Bodis, which she has won also already the Woolmark Prize, and then you come to Dhruv, which is more rich, and then you go to Hem, which is more not street style, but more like more contemporary, and then you go to Aneskaya, that it's very embroidered, and then you go to now sorry, the names are, which is more like, I really liked him because I found it kind of, it's not nice to say references, but it could be more a mix from Balmain Versace, but more in an Indian way. Right, so it was, I mean, I now don't tell all of 11, but it was interesting because everyone has its own world, and everyone had anyway their kind of Indian style.
So what is the biggest challenge you face as a judge, you think? Someone who's, you know, looking out, what do you sort of struggle with when you see these?
Well, no, I don't struggle because I do what I like, but the thing is always deciding, okay, we decide that he or she is the winner. It's always about, I hope we are right. I hope it's not about maybe leaving someone behind, but saying, okay, if we decide it's him or her, it's like we hope we're giving them the spotlight at the right moment, and it doesn't get, you know, a double weapon, and it gets, you know, a problem for him or her to go on. So that's the main challenge. Then for the rest, it's always fun and interesting.
So of course, you know, the spotlight and the platform is great, but how do labels sustain beyond it? You know, I mean, how do the designers, what is your advice to them to continue to keep up the work, to keep up the recognition in a way to post this
Well, you know,
platform?
to construct a brand, it takes time. So it's about always about quality and not quantity. So the fact of, you know, there are many designers that at the beginning they do a collection of 20, 25 pieces. They think, oh, maybe it's few, but it's not about being few, it's about the quality.
Yeah.
So, and this means that, you know, if you do a production of 25 pieces, it's obviously less cost than doing a production of 80 pieces because you have to make happy the showroom, but it's not, then who gives you the money if you don't have it? So that has to be always a small process, one path to the other, and also to don't be in a hurry, which nowadays it's a little bit difficult because with all the Instagram, everyone is in a hurry and everyone is like, you think you're always too late, even a second before. So this has to be a little bit something more linked to your personal, to self-confidence, and always about not listening to too many people.
Okay. So, you know, before my last question, then we can open it up, I think, for questions from the audience. But right now in the industry, there's so many important conversations taking place, you know, about boundaries, sustainability, clothes to make a statement. I'm sure you saw this morning, you know, with the First Lady wearing that jacket. So where do you think we're headed next? What is the conversation that you think we should be having that isn't being had?
Well, it's a lot going on, but for sure for me, who does Vogue Talents, and it's about the new generation, for me right now it's sustainable. I mean, it has to be something that becomes very normal. I mean, if I always say, if I would have go backwards and have 25 and say, nowadays open my own label, I would do it for sure sustainable, because this is the direction that the world has to go, and especially fashion. Then inclusivity, obviously, it's very important, and I think, I mean, the fashion industry is doing it very hardly to do inclusive it, but it has to become normal, even in other fields, which it's not happening. So I think this is more of a two aspects, which is more of a worldwide problem rather than just linked to fashion.
Fashion.
Thank you.